Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. You guys have given us quite a lot to go through this week.
Yeah,
Articles on pretty much everything.
it's a lot.
Yeah, political power plays, climate crisis, potential crisis in the Arctic. I mean, really a deep dive this week.
Buckle up.
So let's just get right into it. I guess we can't ignore the elephant, or I guess in this case, the eagle in the room.
Right.
President Trump and this America Everywhere policy. It's making a lot of headlines.
It really is. And it's interesting to see how it's playing out in very different situations all across the world.
Mm.
You take, for example, the situation in South Africa where Trump froze aid over concerns about their land expropriation law,
Right?
which aims to redistribute land from, well, some of it's owned by white farmers.
Yeah, and they've pushed back pretty hard, haven't they?
They have.
Saying, this is not about race, it's about addressing historical inequalities.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is a very sensitive topic
Of course.
globally, land ownership.
Yeah.
And, the connection to historical injustices.
Yeah. And then there's the proposal for Israel to turn over the Gaza Strip to the U.S.
This is a bold idea,
I mean,
at least initially, to transform it into, a Riviera of the Middle East.
right, through American investment.
Through American investment, yeah. And I mean, there's been a lot of criticism
Oh, yeah.
saying it's unrealistic, ignores the very complex history in the region.
Of course.
Especially with the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
For sure.
Even with the clarifications that relocation would be temporary and the proposal being scaled back, it's still creating a lot of tension.
Yeah, it's definitely a controversial one.
It is.
And, really just kind of highlights how tough it is to find peace in that region.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with these other moves like revoking Biden's security clearance.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of a very assertive foreign policy approach.
And raising eyebrows for sure.
Absolutely.
Especially with, all this talk of politicization and misuse of information.
Right.
And then, of course, we can't forget the comments about annexing Canada.
Oh, yeah. During that conversation with Justin Trudeau.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that really added fuel to the fire.
Oh, for sure.
About, the future of U.S.-Canada relations.
Yeah.
So, a lot of interesting actions, all suggesting maybe a pretty significant shift
Yeah.
in America's approach to global affairs.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out
It will.
on the world stage.
All right, so Trump's not the only one making big moves. Elon Musk, never one to shy away from the spotlight,
Never.
is causing his own share of controversy with the Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE.
DOGE.
Yeah.
Fascinating experiment, I guess you could call it.
It is fascinating.
In leveraging technology to streamline government processes.
Mhm.
But there have been some bumps along the way.
As with any bold endeavor.
Right. Well, like the DOGE staffer that resigned
Oh, right.
after being linked to some pretty offensive online posts.
Race comments.
Yeah, racist comments. And then in classic Elon Musk fashion.
He holds an X poll asking if they should be reinstated.
Yeah,
And the internet spoke,
they did.
and a majority voted in favor.
Mm-hmm.
So Musk brought the employee back,
He did.
sparking a whole debate about diversity and inclusion.
Right. And the message that sends.
Exactly. And I mean, it really raises questions about Musk's leadership
Yeah.
style and how he balances efficiency with, these ethical considerations.
Absolutely.
And then there's the issue of DOGE's access to potentially sensitive government data.
Oh, right.
19 states filed lawsuits concerned about privacy violations
Yeah.
and what this level of access could mean for, individual rights.
And the legal battles have been kind of fascinating.
Haven't they?
Yeah, the judge has issued some mixed rulings,
Yeah.
blocking DOGE from accessing certain Treasury Department data,
Right.
but allowing them to still access Labor Department information.
So it's really like this tug of war
It is.
between efficiency and protecting individual rights
Right.
in the digital age.
Which is a dilemma we're facing more and more as technology gets into every aspect of our lives.
It really is. So it makes you think,
It does.
how do we make sure that progress doesn't, infringe on our fundamental freedoms?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And it's something that's going to shape the future of how we do things,
Yeah.
For years to come.
All right, so speaking of shaping the future, let's move to the global economy,
Okay?
where things are very, shall we say, dynamic.
Dynamic is a good word.
Yeah, Trump's trade policies are making waves,
For sure.
with tariffs on Chinese imports and the threats of tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Right. Although those have been delayed
For now.
for now. Yeah.
Yeah, and the impact is definitely being felt
Oh, absolutely.
globally.
The Canadian dollar has taken a hit.
Yeah, 20-year low.
Yeah.
And the Mexican peso is all over the place.
It's volatile.
It is, yeah. And a lot of businesses are getting nervous,
Rightfully so.
especially in the auto industry.
Oh, yeah, they're predicting some serious profit losses, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, and economists are, starting to talk about a potential slowdown in global growth.
Right?
And we could be seeing inflation on the rise.
That's the worry.
Yeah, it is.
And what's really interesting is how this is all happening while other things are going on in the global economy.
Right.
You've got the Eurozone rebounding, India cut interest rates,
Right.
and China has surged in new loan. I mean, it's all very interconnected,
Yeah.
and it makes it hard to see exactly how things are going to play out.
It really does. Yeah. All right, so speaking of interconnectedness,
Okay.
let's talk about a region that I think often gets overlooked but is very important for the health of our planet.
Okay.
The Arctic.
Carta.
Scientists are saying that by the year 2100,
Wow.
it could be unrecognizable
Really?
due to climate change.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Yeah.
Based on current pledges to limit greenhouse gas emissions,
Okay.
they're projecting a temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And that could have some serious consequences.
Like what kind of consequences?
Well, they're talking about melting ice caps, rising sea levels, and entire ecosystems being altered.
And it's not just about like polar bears and melting ice.
Right.
These changes have a much wider impact.
They do.
They affect the entire planet. It's a reminder that what happens in one place can affect us all.
It really underscores just how interconnected our planet is
It does?
and how urgent this issue of climate change is.
Absolutely.
But before we get too deep into that, let's take a quick look at the world of science and technology,
Okay.
where things are moving at a very fast pace.
Always exciting to see what's new.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, first up, we have crews working against the clock to recover that commuter plane
Oh, right.
that crashed on the sea ice in Alaska.
Yeah.
They're dealing with some really tough conditions.
Yeah, snow and wind, I heard.
Yeah, making it almost impossible.
Wow.
And then looking skyward, we have NASA astronaut Sunita Williams, who's currently on a space mission,
Uh-huh.
reassuring the public that she and her crewmate are not abandoned.
Right.
Despite concerns about delays in their return,
Right.
NASA is, of course, working on getting them back home as soon as possible.
Okay, good.
Back down here on Earth, we have some health news. And unfortunately, it's not all good.
Okay.
Flu levels are currently at their highest since the 2009 pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a good reminder to get vaccinated and take precautions.
Absolutely.
And adding to the health concerns, there's a new form of bird flu, H5N1, that's been detected in U.S. dairy cows.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which, brings up the concern about potential transmission to humans.
Right.
So increased surveillance and biosecurity measures are going to be really important.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's end this segment on a positive note.
Okay, good.
There have been some pretty exciting breakthroughs in science.
Like what?
Well, researchers have made a discovery about how our brains overcome fear.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah, it could lead to new treatments for things like anxiety and phobias.
Imagine the possibilities.
And in another big step forward, there's new technology that could speed up coral reef restoration.
That's great.
Which is good news because they're really threatened by, climate change and human activities.
It is good news.
And this one's relevant to all of us who live in cities.
Yeah.
Research has shown that air pollution can actually impair cognitive function.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's concerning.
It is. It highlights how important environmental health is
Yeah.
for our cognitive well-being.
I would have never thought of that.
So we've covered a lot, haven't we?
We have.
From political games to economic worries and changing Arctic to some exciting scientific discoveries.
It's been a lot.
It has.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's take a deep breath and shift gears
Okay.
to the world of culture.
Culture.
Yeah,
All right. Because even with everything going on,
right.
there's still room for art and entertainment.
Exactly. And one of the most inspiring stories, I think, is about the Ukrainian veterans
Oh, yeah.
participating in the Invictus Games.
Amazing display of resilience
It is.
and determination.
Yeah, showing the incredible strength of the human spirit.
For sure.
And for those of us who love a bit of Hollywood glamour,
Yeah.
the Oscars are almost here.
They are.
Predictions are flying about who will win.
Always a fun time
It is.
for movie fans.
And if you're looking for something to watch at home, there are some great TV shows premiering in February.
Like what?
Well, The White Lotus and Apple Cider Vinegar are getting a lot of buzz.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those.
And in a mix of history and art, a historic violin
Okay.
sold at auction for over $11 million.
Wow.
speaking to the enduring value of these instruments.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some interesting cultural trends that we found.
Okay.
Food nostalgia seems to be on the rise.
Food nostalgia?
Yeah, people are really gravitating toward those classic comfort foods.
Like what kind of foods are we talking about?
Like mac and cheese or grandma's famous
Oh,
cookies.
okay, yeah, comfort food.
Yeah, comfort food.
I get it.
And speaking of comfort, the Danish concept of hygge is becoming really popular.
What is that?
It's about embracing coziness, warmth, and contentment
Okay.
in the simple things.
So like what?
Like candlelight,
Okay.
warm blankets, good company,
Okay.
a sense of peace.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so before we move on,
Okay.
we wanted to touch on a few other stories from around the world
Okay.
because it's important to stay informed about what's happening beyond our own borders.
I agree.
So in the Americas, there's a concerning story out of the Dominican Republic.
What happened?
An Alberta teen woke up from a coma after being assaulted at a resort bar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a reminder to be careful when traveling.
It is.
And over in Asia, the Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte is facing a possible impeachment,
Okay.
which could have big implications for the country's politics.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Meanwhile, in Europe, the Greek island of Santorini
Beautiful place.
declared a state of emergency after being hit by thousands of earthquakes. And in a truly tragic event, a mass shooting at an adult education center near Stockholm, Sweden,
Oh, nay.
has left the country in shock.
Oh, gosh, that's awful.
It's the deadliest shooting in Sweden's history.
I didn't know that.
Turning our attention to Africa, there's a heartbreaking story about a Canadian child who died at a resort in Jamaica.
Oh, that's terrible.
And the UN has issued a warning about the conflict in the DR Congo,
Right.
potentially spreading to neighboring countries.
Which would be devastating.
And before we move on, I think it's important to acknowledge a few disasters and accidents
Okay.
that made the news this week. These events often get overlooked.
Yeah.
But they have a big impact on people's lives.
They do.
A small plane crashed into a bus on a busy street in Sao Paulo, Brazil,
Oh, wow.
killing at least 2 people.
Oh, that's terrible.
And the wreckage of that missing commuter plane in Alaska was found.
Right.
Sadly, there were no survivors. And in a developing story from the world of crime and justice, an arrest has been made in connection with the death of a Super Bowl reporter who was found dead in a hotel room in Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
The investigation is still going on, so we'll continue to follow that story.
So much going on in the world.
I know we've covered a lot today.
We have.
It can be overwhelming trying to keep up with it all.
It can.
But it's important to remember that we're not just passive observers.
Right.
We can choose how we engage with the world,
Absolutely.
how we seek out information, and how we use our voices to make a difference.
I agree.
So on that note,
Okay.
we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts.
Sounds good. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Oh,
It's been quite the journey,
it has.
hasn't it?
We've explored a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, from political maneuvering to economic tremors and the alarming changes in the Arctic.
It really does make you realize how interconnected our world is.
It does.
One event, one decision can have consequences across the globe.
Exactly like a butterfly effect.
Yeah.
And I think a striking example of that is President Trump's America Everywhere policy.
Right.
You know, the tension with South Africa over land expropriation, the controversial proposal for the Gaza Strip, and even those off-the-cuff comments about annexing Canada.
Yeah, it's definitely a bold approach to foreign policy,
It is.
and it's creating a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely. Countries are reassessing their alliances,
Yeah.
and there's concern about the erosion of global norms.
Right. It's like the rules of the game are changing.
Yeah, and it's happening right in front of us.
Right. In real time.
It creates both opportunities and risks.
It's a high-stakes game for sure.
It is.
And it's not just on the global political stage we're seeing this kind of disruption.
Right.
Elon Musk's DOGE is a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
This idea of using technology to make government more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
it raises some fundamental questions
It does.
about privacy ethics and the balance of power in a digital age.
The controversy with the staffer who made those racist posts.
Yeah.
That really brought it to light.
It did. It makes you think about leadership in a world where online actions have real-world consequences.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And the legal battles over DOGE's access to government data, those mixed rulings about access to Treasury and Labor Department information.
It shows the tension between efficiency and individual
It
rights.
really does.
And that debate's only going to get more intense.
As technology keeps advancing.
Yeah. Where do we draw the line? How do we make sure that progress doesn't come at the cost of our freedom?
Big questions.
Big questions.
Okay, let's shift gears again.
Right.
From the digital world to the global marketplace,
Okay.
where things are just as unpredictable.
Yeah.
Trump's trade wars,
Right.
those tariffs on Chinese imports and the threat of tariffs on Canada and Mexico, a lot of anxiety.
A lot.
And you can see it in the
Yeah.
way the Canadian dollar and the Mexican peso are fluctuating.
Absolutely. Businesses are nervous, especially in the auto industry.
Right. They're talking about losing profits.
Yeah.
And then there are the broader concerns.
Like a global slowdown.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
inflation.
Not good.
But there are some positive developments, too.
There are.
The Eurozone is recovering.
Yeah.
India's cutting interest rates. And China's economy is still going strong.
It's hard to predict what's going to happen.
It really is.
But we have to stay informed
Absolutely.
and be ready to adapt.
Okay.
Now, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind.
Okay.
The state of the Arctic.
Yeah, those scientific predictions about rising temperatures,
Yeah.
it's a big concern.
Climate change is happening now.
It is.
And the Arctic is like a warning sign
Right.
for the planet.
And those projected temperature increases could have huge consequences.
Melting ice caps, rising sea levels, changes in weather patterns.
And it's not just environmental.
Right.
There are geopolitical implications, too.
Absolutely new shipping routes, opening up competition for resources.
Climate change is an environmental issue, an economic issue, a security issue, and a humanitarian issue.
We need to work together to address it
Absolutely.
with a sense of urgency.
But amidst all this talk of global challenges,
Yeah.
we can't forget that there's still good in the world.
There is.
Stories like the Ukrainian veterans at the Invictus Games
It's inspiring to
is,
see their courage and determination.
yeah, they've been through so much.
They have.
And they're still striving for excellence.
The human spirit is amazing.
And on a lighter note, things like the Oscars and new TV shows,
Yeah.
they remind us that there's still room for entertainment and art.
Those shared experiences that connect us.
Exactly.
And speaking of connecting,
yeah.
those cultural trends we talked about,
Right.
food nostalgia and a headache,
Yeah.
they speak to a human need for comfort and belonging.
It makes sense that people are seeking solace in simple things.
It does.
When the world feels overwhelmed,
Yeah, it's about creating a haven for ourselves
a space where we can recharge.
and find peace.
But we can't ignore the tragedies that have happened this week.
The plane crashes,
Yeah.
the shooting in Sweden.
The death of that child in Jamaica.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
It reminds us that life is fragile.
It does, and how unpredictable the world can be.
We can get caught up in the big events,
Right.
but it's important to remember that real people are affected by these tragedies.
They are.
We need to remember to cherish each day
Yeah.
and appreciate the people in our lives.
And find ways to make a positive impact.
Absolutely. Even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm reflecting on all the different topics we've covered,
A lot of ground.
from politics to economics to the Arctic to science and technology.
We barely scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn and explore.
There is.
And it's exciting.
It is. It's what keeps us engaged and informed.
So let's remember
Yeah.
that we're not just observers.
We're participants.
And our actions have an impact.
Every action counts.
So we'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
We talked about how the Arctic could be beyond recognition by 2100.
Right.
What other changes might we see in our lifetimes?
What will the world look like in 50 years, in 100 years?
These are questions worth thinking about
They are.
as we navigate the complexities of our world.
And strive to create a better future.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've really gone on a journey today,
We have.
exploring so many events that are shaping our world. It's been a lot.
It has kind of a roller coaster of information.
It really has, yeah. And amidst all this complexity and uncertainty, there's one thing that keeps coming back to me,
What's that?
the human element.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's global conflicts or technology or even cultural trends, it always comes back to us.
Our choices, our actions, our innovations, even our fears, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of a daunting thought,
It is.
but also empowering.
Yeah, we're not just passengers on this planet.
Right.
We're part of the crew.
We are.
So what does all this mean for you, our listener?
Yeah.
We've covered so much today. It can feel overwhelming,
It can.
but the key takeaway
Yeah.
is not to be paralyzed by it all.
Don't let the information overload stop you
Exactly.
from taking action.
Don't let the headlines define your understanding of the world.
You have to dig deeper.
You do.
Challenge those assumptions,
And seek out different perspectives.
and then find ways to make a difference.
Even small actions can have a big impact.
They can.
So on that note,
Okay.
we'll leave you with this final thought.
All right.
We talked about how the Arctic could be unrecognizable by 2100.
Right.
If that happens, what other changes might we see in our lifetimes?
What will the world look like in 50 years, 100 years?
It's a question worth exploring.
It is.
And on that note, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.